Well, Nate Thuli, welcome to Destination Aviation.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate it. It's been an exciting episode for me to think about because I'll say it's not even, as I was going over this question, and we'll get into who you are and what you're doing, but with the flying car, and this will make sense as we go through the episode, but
Sure.
not only just in our industry, but kind of the running, I don't know if joke or saying, but forever, everybody who ever has a complaint about something, they're right. Well, when I was a kid, they promised me a flying car. And look, now they're telling us not to eat the Tide dishwashing pot. So,
Exactly. Yeah, no,
yeah,
no. Broken promises all around us.
right, right. But you're going to be the guy who gets it done, right?
Working on it. Our platform's not going to be driving on the road. We're going to get up into the air pretty fast, but I think it's a better way to get around.
I love that. Well, so our audience it's an eclectic group. There's some people that know nothing about aviation, and then there's a lot of people that listen to it that are similar to me, and they have a role in aviation doing something, maybe at your end users at some point, airport executives, stuff like that nature. Just at the beginning, I know I have cheated, so I have all your information in front of me, but just for the listeners, could you kind of explain, who you are, how you got into this, and the interest behind the flying car, and how you got to be to this point today? In a brief, I know I only have you for an hour, so
Yeah. So Airhart goes back to 2022, and our founder Nikita was actually learning how to fly himself, and saw a lot of limitations with modern aviation, and modern aviation kind of in quotes. There are a lot of outdated processes, a lot of outdated hardware, a lot of outdated aspects to that, and there are a lot of points that he points of pain that he just didn't love, and what we realized very early on is that there is a way to make aviation safer and more accessible. And by that I mean more approachable. More people can get in a plane and learn how to fly and go experience what aviation opens up, right? And so that's been the North Star. It's making aviation safer and more accessible. To get there, um, we are developing a full solution, a full aircraft, full fly by wire system. Um, and right now, Airhart Avionics is the first portion of that aircraft we're bringing to market this year. So what we're doing is we're taking the avionics system that we're developing, which is full custom hardware, custom software. Every inch of that platform is Earhart designed and developed. And we're bringing that to market as a standalone unit. So this avionics system can plug into an existing aircraft, or if you're building a new airplane, it can be integrated into that from beginning. And it's opening up a lot closer human system interaction with the platform. We're using this as an opportunity to really kind of reimagine what the relationship between a pilot and avionics can be and what that opens up, right? And so new opportunities to make it more accessible, and then ultimately safer, which we can unpack in a lot more detail, of course, in this conversation. But we're really bringing the pilot together with the avionics system in a new way, and I'm very excited about it. It's an incredible product coming together.
no, I love it with some of the packet that you guys have that you put forward. I was able to look at. I've heard some of the stats before, but 70% of people not finishing their pilot's license, things like that you guys put in your documentation.
Right.
But it is staggering. It's staggering to read it again, and just
Yeah,
the access for people to be able to fly. One, thank you for your service. You're United States Air Force, correct?
I was. Yeah, thank you.
Is that what started your interest? Because you're the CEO of Earhart, right? That is
I'm
your
actually I'm
role.
the president of Earhart, and
President?
actually no. So my interest in this goes back before the Air Force. It's wild. If you would have gone to 5-year-old Nate, little 5-year-old Nate climbing trees and making paper airplanes, and been like, "Hey Nate, what do you want to do when you grow up?" I would have said, "I want to run a company building an airplane." And this is what I want to do. and
Look at that.
yeah, and
Serendipitous.
it gives me chills realizing that, because this has been my focus since I was old enough to understand that we should do things in the world, right? And so I grew up making any piece of paper I could get my hands on ended up being a plane, and I would fly it, and I was that guy that, as soon as I could in high school, got my pilot's license. So I've been flying for 20 years. then I went to the Air Force Academy, and I was an instructor pilot in the glider program there, and just this love of aviation just never went away. For a couple different reasons, I actually didn't go on and fly in the Air Force. I stopped flying, and I went into kind of the business side. I went into program management, and um, really started falling in love with the mechanisms that we can move to move something of value into the world in a way that's efficient and effective. And as much as I love aviation, I saw that there was a need to develop this skill set to look at things of value that are coming into the world and move them well, and so I've done that in a couple different startups. I've done that in larger programs, larger companies. Prior to this, I ran a different company in the DoD space, and really fell in love with the kind of value transformation aspect of that. And then obviously the people aspect of it. You can't run a company without people. And I love working with people. I love working with teams. And and so then it was about a year and a half long journey, working with Nikita, finding the right time to kind of come on board and join the team. But it truly has been, a culmination of really the last 30 some years of, looking up at the sky and going, there's got to be a better way we can do this. Right. And I think it's time now. Anytime you approach some of these larger problems, you look at sort of the totality of aviation, for example, and it's an aspirational North Star to go, hey, let's make that safer and more accessible. Those are not easy. And there's been a tremendous amount of work over the last, decades, trying to go after both of those. And there are a lot of sort of fundamental levers that need to come together, a lot of disparate technology that needs to mature at its own rate. And what I think we're seeing right now is a lot of the underlying technology is at a maturation level that it can really start coming together at a time when, through MOSAIC, the FAA is saying, hey, we got to double down on innovation. We need to see a relationship with those that are developing technology and those that are writing policy, that we're incentivizing as best we can ways for this tech to come together and really move the needle to a more innovative, safer, more accessible aviation. And so it's time. It's time to do this, and we're positioned right there to be a player in that, and to be one of the companies that's putting a lot of hard work into our portion of that.
Well, it seems like they have the right person for the job then. I'm picturing young Nate down in DeKalb with his little,
Yeah,
design paper airplane.
yeah, it's
That's
exactly
so
yeah,
cool though,
yeah.
to have your vision, to have your plan, and to see it come to fruition. That's I mean, so many times, I mean, how many, I don't even know, you go back to that age where I was "Oh, be a cowboy." Astronaut might
Yeah.
have been in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've been around it forever. My dad was an air traffic controller, and so,
Okay.
from the time, I mean, from even before I was 5 years old, I was learning the world of the FAA and air traffic control, and, he was an air traffic controller in Chicago Center, and so, a lot of traffic crossing the US, and,
Yeah, I was just
you know
gonna you knew I already knew where my head was going. I was gonna ask you where he was. So was that
Yeah,
still in Elgin back then? Was that where
actually,
that was?
Aurora. Yep, it's in Aurora.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
Okay, okay,
yep,
alright.
or it was, yeah.
I think now they have or wait, he was he at Center or was he at Tracon?
Center. Yeah,
Center, okay. I
yeah.
got my own wires confused. Yes, okay.
Got it.
Tracon's in Elgin.
Yeah,
No, it's
yep.
always interesting to go around and see the buildings. Like, oh yeah, there's that.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's funny, if you drive by, if from what I remember, it's been many years now, it's not an interesting looking building, it's just a, very discreet building with, a lot of fencing around it, but the amount of air traffic that facility is directing is unbelievable, and it's
I know,
incredible, and,
I know.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's always very fun.
My brother, he was a controller, he retired at Cleveland Center, and they were 22 air route traffic control centers, I think, in our
Okay.
country, but it's funny 'cause I've been in the one in Oakland, I've been in the one in Cleveland. I haven't been in the one in Aurora, but they seem to have that kinda general feel to it of what a center is, but
Yeah,
yeah, it is
yeah,
amazing how much,
yeah.
traffic they handle.
Yeah,
Um
and that's what kept my love of aviation alive. from the youngest age, my dad would come home, at the end of the day, or, as an air traffic controller, his work days were always very weird, but he would tell me about the planes. He's like, the Citation 10, I worked one today, and like those things are real now, and it was a new plane at the time. And he was like, I controlled a couple F-16s today, and you should have seen the
Love
climb
that.
that they did. And it was like aviation is so cool.
Was it, Arnold Palmer on that Citation 10? I think he got the first one off the line.
May have been, yeah, yeah. I know that I mean, that was a massive, turning point in aviation on that plane coming
Well,
online,
it's funny, so I worked in the Pittsburgh area for a while, and then he was from the Latrobe area, and that's where I first learned Cessna and him had a partnership with the jet lines. Whatever new jet was coming out, he got it first. And then when
Oh,
I
cool.
started working here at Chicago Executive Airport, he had ties to the communities in the north side of Chicago, so he would come in often. So I bet you at some point your dad
Yeah.
probably worked him.
Probably,
All
probably.
all
Yep,
joking
yep.
aside there. But
Small
this
world.
seems to be, to your point, all coming together because MOSAIC, I'll be honest, on my part, I was up in, Oshkosh, I think, this last year when
Mhm,
Brian Bedford, I think, announced MOSAIC had moved forward. Maybe it was actually Secretary Duffy, somebody, or both of
mhm.
them. But so your prototype, what you're building, you're also too basing it off of the kind of MOSAIC ideology that, it's not as strict standards basically, right, for medical
Right.
certificates?
Exactly. Yeah, and the big reason is, if if companies are allowed or incentivized to develop an aircraft, they're naturally incentivized to make that aircraft as safe as possible, right? Like, that's what we want to do. And what I find really incredible about Mosaic is it says, hey, you know what? Let's take a little bit more of an innovation forward approach, and let's put some of the opportunity on those that are developing capability and say, you know what? Run with this for a little bit. Let's see what we can come up with, because we got to modernize. We have to work together to modernize what that is, and I personally, I feel very strongly that that's a good solution. I think it's the right thing for the industry to say, you know what, let's invest in that. Let's push the needle, because there's a lot of great tech coming together that's being matured, in the automotive industry and the AI industry, that has a place in aviation. And if companies are given the opportunity to really pull that in and bring that over the finish line, I think we'll see some really incredible stuff coming to the market through this. And so, it's a good time.
Yeah, no, to be in this space, I mean, when I was looking forward to talking to you about this, I had seen your aircraft, or how do you refer to it as a car or an aircraft? What do you refer to it
It's
as?
an aircraft. Yeah,
It
it's an
is an
aircraft.
aircraft, okay.
Yes. Yep.
Uh, because it has the shape of a car, right?
Well,
From
so
what
the
I've seen.
no, no, so right now our current test bed is a Sling TSI. That's a
Okay.
very traditional aircraft. Um, our clean slate design does it does look a little bit more car-like, largely because there's a lot we can learn from how cars are mass produced and sort of the manufacturing methods, and that lends itself to a certain look. But then also because, alongside our avionics, we are developing a fly-by-wire system, which allows us to control more complex airframes that have friendlier stall characteristics, but potentially, more challenging to operate. And so it does end up aerodynamically looking a little bit different, but because that's what unlocks, the fuel efficiency, the speed, the range, that our avionics and fly-by-wire system can make happen.
So you had mentioned it early on, and as I was reading your stuff, and I want to make sure I get my own headspace right on this, especially for people that listen to this that maybe aren't completely in our space or in our orbit. With what you guys are designing, did you say you can adapt that into any kind of traditional aircraft, the technology to be more autonomous? Did I understand that earlier correct, or is
Yeah,
it okay?
yeah. So specifically, our you think of what Airhart is doing is kind of three core components. The very first component, and this is what's happening in 2026, we're going to market this year, is an avionics panel. And the way we've developed this is, if you look on the back side of a panel and you look at all the different modules, all the different units, all the wiring complexity, we're replacing that with one slab of glass that is actually a couple different displays embedded in, um, and then all the components physically attached to that one unit. So we're dropping the amount of parts and complexity considerably, and then in doing so, the wiring is considerably simplified. And what that does is now we can physically mount that display and really any kind of avionics or any kind of cockpit, and so we're starting with our test bed is it is a sling aircraft, but you know, it can be installed really anywhere that you can put a panel, right? Obviously, we're looking at an uncertified experimental type of an install at this point, and that's where Mosaic and LSA is kind of the core focus for right now. Um, but uh, but yeah, it's an avionics system, and it can plug in. With that interface, we do bring a lot of as you're talking about kind of the automation to that, then, and the big reason is if you look at kind of first principles on safety and accessibility, very quickly, the research goes into the cognitive load put on a pilot. How many times do you hear pilots task saturated or you're getting behind the aircraft, right? And so it's on the pilot to get ahead of the plane to reduce cognitive burnout. And that's where, we're trying to develop the right flows, the right checklists, the right level of training, the right level of proficiency so that you stay ahead of the plane and you're not falling behind that, I guess. Said another way, we're trying to stay short of a cognitive level of burnout, right? And so, um, by looking at it at that level of kind of first principle, we can look at the touch points that a human has within this system. So, touch point number one, their hands are on the controls. You got throttle, you got a stick. Touch point number two, for us, it's a touch screen panel, and so they're physically reaching out and interacting with the avionics. And then three, anytime you're on the comms, right, and you're talking. Um, so we're bringing levels of automation to all three of those layers. All the way down to checklists, to heading changes, to radio calls. Basically, think of our system as if we could have a really competent, focused, dedicated CFI sitting right next to us every time we fly, what are the things he or she will be looking at, paying attention to, choosing when to intervene a little bit or saying hands off and kind of nudging some of the right behaviors. Um, that's what we have in mind for kind of what an avionics system of the future will be like. It's going to be there observing a lot more than just throwing data at the pilot, but actually looking at what is that pilot doing with that information? Can we nudge certain behaviors? Can we bring certain automations so that so we're not flying alone in a way, and really seeing our avionics as sort of a CFI sitting right next to you, and we can unpack all the training aspects of that as well because it's actually an incredibly fascinating aspect of that. But that was a bit long winded, but that's kind of the answer.
No, no. I mean, it's such a fascinating topic, and again, in my side of the world, everybody, like I said, even if you're not in aviation, the flying car kind of concept has always been kind of forefront with people using it as well. I was promised it, but it's very, and reading all your stuff, it is a very interesting approach to it. So, what kind of correct me if I'm wrong here, but with like Garmin and what Cirrus is doing, I think recently was it a King Air outside Boulder, Colorado that did the auto land when the pilot became incapacitated. So your system could be applied in such a way for pilots to use in their traditional aircraft, and then ultimately you're building the ideology of
Yeah.
driving a minivan, right, for that person.
Mhm.
Is that ultimately where you wanna go with this? But
Exactly.
at the beginning, it to your point about having somebody redundant secondary, because right now, like, I'm just a recreational pilot. I fly, with, like, 4 flight, and that has for me, I showed up with my chart supplement and my sectional, and the young
Yeah.
person who was doing my, biannual was like, "What the heck is all that?" Like, he's
Yeah.
like, "Go get
Exactly.
foreflight." Right.
Yep.
But
Yep.
it
Yep.
sounds like, to me, it was a huge bunch of, information that is readily available at your fingertips now. But yours would take that kind of data and be able to supporting the traditional pilot flying, and then ultimately this device, this end system that any average person could operate similar to operating a vehicle.
Yeah, yeah, it's similar to that. And so the way to think about it is, you go get an aircraft, and let's run through I'm safe, for example, right? So am I sick? Am I on any kind of meds? And have I slept well? Like all the factors, right? And um, that's sort of the just bare minimum of, should I even be thinking about flying right now, right? And then you get into, okay, so when did I last fly? Am I current? And then I'm safer adds an R in there of like, and then what I have flown, is that actually relevant to what I'm doing right now? And what we're trying to do is we're sort of layering on, hey, let's add on all the different elements that would lead to the highest probability that you are at least prepared to operate the mission you're about to do with that aircraft, right? Um, and what we're looking at here is, um, that's sort of the current state for before you fly, what you run through. And then the current state for avionics is, hey, let's put all this information in front of a pilot. Um, let's make checklists available. Let's make charts available. And then the pilot is then led to manage this entire system, right? And very often the higher performance comes with higher complexity. And so when you have higher performance, higher complexity, with that often becomes a need for higher automation, right? And so that's why you often see, the use of autopilot more often. That's where you see a lot of the benefits of instrument flying, where it starts to bring a lot of predictability and automation to that. And so that's kind of the current state, right? Um, and what we're doing is, let's pull that even further. So before you fly, our system knows, um, really down to the fractions of a second, phase of flight, pilot inputs, controls, control inputs, all of this, and can look at what types of approaches a pilot has done recently. How is he or she doing on holding a heading, or putting up the flaps at the right time, putting down the flaps at the right time, responding to radio calls quickly and with the right language. Looking at something as simple as the flare before touching down. We know that when the width of a runway changes, there's kind of a visual illusion that goes on that, can change when it seems like it's the right time to flare. Our system knows exactly how high off the ground the pilot started to put in the bit of a flare, and we can provide feedback on that as well. Um, all the way down to, anyway, just kind of deconstructing the flight and all of
Yeah.
those components. And so then with that, you look at, okay, so now we know so much more about the flight. And we can even look at, let's say you're in an unusual attitude. We can look at, hey, did the pilot put in the right corrective inputs correctly, right? Nose low in a bank, did they just pull up and kind of figure it out, or did they level the wings, pull symmetrically, all those types of things? And what that opens up now is the opportunity to debrief and pre-flight a flight like never before. And we can really deconstruct, hey, the flight you're about to take, the mission you're about to perform, here are all these different elements that are going to go into that. How are you doing in sort of preparation for that? And so that's where the safety element really starts to come together. And then what you can see naturally is that training becomes sort of fundamentally tied to what we're doing. And that's where automation by itself, and sorry, it's long-winded. I am getting to the automation question. Automation by itself can produce safer outcomes, but it could come at the cost of competency, or not necessarily more capable pilots. Right. And so the big way to kind of think about that is, Tesla has been kind of a pioneer in self-drive. And, let's say you get in your car and you hit self-drive, and you start having this kind of automation, more and more. Um, a benefit of that is that very often a high performing self-drive system will get you from point A to point B very well. and it'll be predictable. It'll be making logically linked decisions on a closed system on the roads that may even help traffic because cars are operating more logically. This is a good thing, right? That we're seeing more of this. But if you use that automation all the time, your ability to actually operate that as a human being starts to atrophy. It's not good for competency, it's good for outcomes. And in something like aviation, we can't do that. We can't automate away the pilot's ability to continually become more proficient, more current, more capable. And so we have to tie those in together. And so the end result, when done the right way, is automation is more of a fluid thing. It'll step in. It will make sure the right outcome happens. In a flare, if a pilot makes a bad decision and flares at the completely wrong time, our system can go, no, no, hold on. We're going to finish this safely because we're aware of all this. But now let's talk about that afterward. Let's debrief this. Let's talk about what's going on here. Let's give visual cues to the pilot to help inform the right behavior so that there's relentless ongoing training that's happening. So that's the kind of the grand vision.
AI serving such a critical role with that single pilot, especially configuration. But no, to hear you describe it, it seems like a good way, a good methodical way to put forward this ideology to actually make it happen. And so, kudos to you and your team for putting a package together like that. Because even me as just a private pilot who's buzzing around out there. Um, the leaps in what you can do with technology now and what you guys could take it to the next level. I love that thought. So you said you're right now test stages of the technology, and you're testing on what, I'm sorry, the type of aircraft you said you were testing on.
It's we're our test bed is a Sling TSI.
Okay. And when do you anticipate that you would start work with local avionics shop to install in your type
Mhm,
aircraft? Is that
mhm.
where
That
ultimately you would?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and so, actually, if you look behind me right here, you can see we're in a hangar. Our test bed is actually sitting right down there.
I
Our
love
our
that you have a
uh,
view into your hangar, by the way. Again, you
yes,
can tell
it's
you're the right guy for the job.
yeah, yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Um yeah, and so our development is happening right down there. Right around the corner from me, we have a simulator where customers can come right now and actually fly the system. Um, our simulator is actually set up in a way where customers can not only interact with our avionics, but they can fly the avionics with or without the semi-autonomous simplified flight controls activated. So you can kind of see, hey, in a traditional aircraft, how would this avionics setup translate into conventional controls? Um, we can then flip a button and turn on our simplified flight controls. You can go, okay, so now if I'm operating in this with the fly by wire system and kind of that next layer, how does that translate further? And we set up the sim in a way intentionally because what we're doing with this AI, or not with this AI, with the UI, is we're we are conveying information in a way that's familiar, but it's also unique. We are conveying it a little bit differently because when you start to look at sort of the future of aviation and what some of these extra layers of automation can put in place, you do want information presented a little differently. We do want information being made contextually aware. So again, it's not, hey, here's all the information you should be seeing. It's here's what you should be seeing now, right? And again, it's getting at pilot workload and cognitive load and really driving that down. We're even looking at high gain, low gain, pilots in terms of what their stick inputs are, and we're observing changes in behavior based on cognitive load, and it's it's fascinating when you see the changes in the voice or physical behavior of a pilot when he or she is reaching a point of saturation or falling behind the aircraft, right? And so we're working very hard to develop a UI that's very contextually aware of that and presenting that information. And so that's available to see right now. Um, what's very exciting about what's happening right down below me is our test bed for the last couple of years has been flying with our prototype system. Um, it's been crossing the country a couple of times. It's incredible. Um, over on the bed over here, we have our first production hardware now assembled. It's on a fully assembled table, and as we speak, right now, we're early 2026. We're actually removing all the prototype hardware. It's actually been ripped out, and we're currently integrating the production unit into there. And so it's that final step of, hey, what we're looking at in this aircraft isn't even, it's not prototype hardware anymore. This is what we're bringing to market this year. Um, because we're finally at that milestone, we do have pre-orders now open, so customers can put down a refundable deposit to be one of the first to join. We have pre-orders in already, um, and then we will be at AirVenture in Oshkosh
You
this
will be.
July.
Oh,
We
okay.
will be. Um, and we'll have the simulator. Hopefully, we'll have the plane as well. But customer to be able to see that, and then with unit shipping not long after that. So, for anyone that's building an aircraft in 2026, this is probably the ideal time to be looking at what avionics are going into there. And for anyone that has an operational aircraft right now and is looking at avionics, again, it's a great time because the big thing we did is like I mentioned before, we took away not only the complexity of the hardware, but the complexity of the wiring, the complexity of the install. If you price out what a wire harness costs to wire up a conventional avionics system, it's unnecessarily expensive and cost and complicated. So we're eliminating a lot of that. So it's a very easy install. Um, we do have room for three more customer planes here to do installs right here in LA. That's why the hangar is set up the way it is. But we're also working with different installers to, to have the right relationships in place that if people don't want to do the install themselves, or with us, they have options. But I would welcome people doing the install themselves too.
Really? Okay.
It's not as scary as it might think.
So you're in Long Beach. So right now, to your point, and then you a couple of things with that. You mentioned something on not on your side being expensive, but I will say at least from your paperwork to be and kind of the forefront of this doesn't seem like it's that expensive. If I have the right number here, it's about $1,000. Is that right to be at a pre-order?
That's it. That's
Yeah,
exactly right. Yep.
that's anybody can do that. Look at that.
And that's a refundable deposit. That's just a chance for us to open up the door, what that is, and then two, to start mapping out, kind of spacing out when these installs will be going on, and then three, um, the big part too is, early on, as with any modern tech, there is an opportunity for what it is we're bringing to market to still have some kind of influence. And we are pilots. Like I said, I've been flying for 20 years. I've been passionately into this world since I was 5 years old. I want to connect with pilots. I want to connect with as many people as I can that are either in the pilot world or in the world of producing capability that pilots should know about or care about. And part of opening up pre-orders, 6, 7 months early, is that we get that conversation going earlier. And especially for early adopters of a new system, we want to hear their voice. We want to hear what it is that they're working with, what they're seeing, because we maintain a strong bias for change. If we see an opportunity for us to improve this, even as we're going to market,
Yeah,
we're going to do that.
yeah.
And we're kind of making that available. And so, not only do we welcome pre-orders, but we welcome the voice and points of pain that we're seeing from our customers and fellow pilots. And let's make aviation better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no.
um,
So, and you mentioned 3 spots in your hangar. So in 2026 to have installs on the avionics side of the world, you would be offering that to and with what you guys are projecting in 2026, you would offer clients, they wanna come to Long Beach and have an install, they can do that in your hangar?
exactly. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the flying car, the flying car itself, when would that you anticipate a consumer could buy one of those?
Yeah, so that's gonna be a couple more years,
Okay.
and, that and the main reason is what enables that aircraft. I wouldn't call it a flying car. It's
Okay.
definitely a,
I'm gonna
traditional
cross that
aircraft.
off the front here. No flying
Yeah,
car.
it does have a lot of car-like characteristics, and just in the sense that it's design language that is proven out by a tremendous amount of cars on the road,
Yeah.
and we can learn a lot from automotive design language, both in terms of UI and physical structure, but also in terms of the industrial design and how individual components come together. And so you see a lot of that design language in it, but yeah, in order to enable that, and I keep looking off screen because we have a giant 8-foot photo of it right there. I won't I
Right.
won't pan the camera, but it's literally right there. Um, and there are things we need to do to enable what that future looks like. And
Yeah.
so the fly-by-wire system being one of those. But then also the avionics system, it's not just the touch points, it's how deeply into that plane our system can reach, into the engine, into the flight controls, into the physical movement through air that the aircraft is doing, and we can state estimate that. I'll say less there, but we can do more with that estimation than what's currently capable in the market, and that opens up a lot of really incredible aircraft design, which is what we're bringing later. Um, and honestly, it's one of those that we're just so excited to start proving what that is that
Right.
it's let's get this avionics going now,
Right.
and
Right.
um, one approach would be to kind of develop the avionics and the flight controls and the plane all together and sort of do that all at the same time. But we're missing a lot of opportunity to really mature a portion of that in parallel to the greater vision, and so any opportunity to make something better
Yeah.
alongside this kind of parallel path is the way to
Yeah.
do it.
Well, and I love the adaptability to because I think you had said with your system, your avionics system, it could be adapted into most aircraft, right? At least it could,
Yeah,
generally
and
speaking.
at this point, uncertified
Sure.
aircraft.
Sure.
So really we're targeting MOSAIC. I think that's going to be the
Yeah. Sure.
easiest opportunity for folks, but any kind of experimental type aircraft.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yep.
because I mean, in my day job, there's a lot of you see a lot of the Cirruses flying around now, but I think the starting price of a Cirrus, right, is over $1 million, I think now.
Yeah. Yep.
And people really love the systems in it, but I love the thought that there's something that, it's kind of the same when we start talking about lead and fuel, right? And the biggest
Mhm.
thing is adaptability, right? And getting a system that, could be used across many different platforms, different styles,
Mhm.
different manufacturers. I think that is very important. So for me not to butcher this completely and this will be the last time I say flying car,
Yeah.
but what do you actually what do you refer to that prototype as? And like trying to find in the paperwork here, but is there a name to that or
Um, there's some there's something we call it internally that we don't
okay,
we don't
we
share
don't
yet.
share. Okay, fair.
It's the Earhart aircraft is really what
Airhart
it is.
aircraft.
Yep.
Now, with that vision, do you envision that aircraft utilizing kind of traditional access points in aviation, airports, airstrips around? I think in the United States, you have like 19,000 airstrips. Or do you envision that that's something somebody could have at their home?
Right. Yeah, so we're not solving point to point down to the home.
Okay.
Our aircraft is intended to be operated out of a traditional
Okay.
airport. Um, yeah,
That's good news
and
for me.
really, yeah, yeah, and a lot of that's because that infrastructure is there, like you mentioned, a lot of airports. And so there's a lot of thought we had on do we look at short takeoff, off field, where do we want to look at, and really is the infrastructure is there for airport to airport type of thing. Point to point, we can be on the ground or urban air mobility kind of closes the gap a little bit further. And so the piece of the puzzle that we're solving is airport to airport, longer range, higher speed. What you would typically do, and this is where the car dynamic comes up a little bit of load this up like you would your family SUV and go take the trip, right?
Yeah.
And but instead of doing that on a congested roadway, do it up in the air, in a way that's safer. And a big inspiration behind this is, when you're loading that up, you're putting the most precious lives in this aircraft, and from a safety perspective, aviation has come an incredibly long way. It is safer than it's ever been. Um, but not safe enough. And part of the reason why is when something does go wrong, the consequences that are worse than, oh, I hit a pothole or I had a fender bender. It goes from bad to terrible, all too often, right? And so safety is just absolutely paramount in this.
Yeah, well, that's one of the I think about our industry, a lot of industries, but especially ours. One of the amazing things is people like you that come in and nobody ever just sits on their laurels in this industry, right? And if there's an issue, if there's a problem, redundancies built in. Even today, it's you and I probably came through a similar generation and the time in aviation. And I remember, back then an accident, especially a commercial airliner or something, was about every 3 years. I think statistically there was
Mm,
a loss. I think it was around 2009, the Colgan Air accident. And then, unfortunately what happened at DCA last year. It's like, oh my God, like this can happen in this industry. And so you're right. I mean, but it is also a story of, we never stop, with that quest to
mhm,
make it safer, but,
mhm,
it is amazing that, just people like you, the ingenuity, I love that our industry attracts talent like you to come in and make it
mhm,
safer, especially for, people flying in that or the Mosaic in that style,
mhm,
if you're flying in that over, because a lot of that is, not necessarily I'm flying under Mosaic right now, but, I'm in a recreational pilot, and you're right, you
mhm.
take people up and there's a lot of things running through your head. And
Yeah.
if you could have a
Yeah.
system like yours to help you, because again, in my mind, and this is Jeff Miller, not smart Nate speak, but in my mind, I'm thinking in my own evolution of where I've come in flying. Even over the last 10 years, going from paper to, oh, I
Yeah.
can have it all on an iPad, and then to
Yeah.
what you guys are doing, taking it even further and
Mhm,
really turning it into I loved your analogy about a CFI and having somebody, kind of there
mhm.
helping you along the way. And no, it is.
Yeah.
It's such a special thing. So on your guys' front, you're gonna hit the ground running this year, avionics or what you're planning. You're gonna be in
Mhm.
Oshkosh, right? Correct?
Yep.
Showcasing.
Mhm.
I'd put a plug in, Chicago Executive Airport's just a few hours down the road.
Exactly, exactly,
We're
right?
turning 100 this year. We're gonna have a big event on June 27th,
June
fireworks,
27th.
Embry-Riddle. We're gonna have, the Ford Tri-Motor down here, the B-25. If you'd
Oh,
like to
incredible.
bridge that gap into the future, let us know.
There you go, I love that. Wow, what an incredible, bridge to form right here,
Yeah,
from
right? You're the
tri-motor to the
future, got the
future, yep.
past.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but and yeah, you get to I don't know, your parents and stuff, they're still in the area. Look at that, everybody's right around Chicago. I'm just gonna keep pitching it till the
absolutely.
end of this podcast.
I love it, I love it, yep. Yeah, no, Chicago's home, and honestly, some of my roots, I remember, so I started flying in high school, got my pilot's license as soon as I could.
What
I
airport was
I
that out
was,
of? If you don't mind me asking?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What airport was that out of, if you don't mind me asking?
That would have been out of, DeKalb
It
Municipal,
was.
DKB.
Okay,
Yeah.
DKB,
Um,
alright.
yep. At the time, it was, I believe it was Midwest Flight Academy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then I was both a newly minted car driver with a brand new driver's license, also then driving to the airport to go fly. I was pumping gas and, actually playing piano, somewhat professionally to pay for flying because flying's not cheap. And I was actually I was part of the Kishwaukee Education Consortium at Kishwaukee College,
Yeah.
and the flying program that was really coming into fruition way back then. And Bruce Griffith, the administrator at the time, was the champion behind standing up that entire thing. And yeah, and just a fun story. I remember one time I was at the airport. We had a ground school that we would do, so we had potential students coming through, and they would get dual credit for college and the program. And I was closing up the classroom, getting it locked up, getting the lights turned off, and I got a phone call from Bruce, the guy that was running the whole thing and getting us off the ground. And he said, "Hey, Thuli, are you still at the airport?" And, yeah, Bruce, I'm still here. He's like, "Hey, don't leave. I'll be right there." And like, okay, cool. So I keep locking up, and all of a sudden I see a Piper PA, I think it's 18, the
Yeah.
Super Cup coming over, door, opened up completely, leather bomber jacket, sunglasses. He's bombing over there. He kills the engine and whips the tail around. He's like, "Dooley, get in here." and I get chills right now, and, like, aviation is so cool, you know?
So much fun.
Um,
I love
so
that.
I hopped in the back seat, and he fired it up, and we took off. He flew over his home. He's like, "Hey, that's where I live. There's my home," you know? And then we flew over, there's a corn maze, every year, and we could see the pattern that they had made from that
I
from
was
the air,
thinking,
and
a little
yeah,
cheat
I was
sheet.
just taking notes. Oh, so that's how
Like,
you get up. That's how
look
you
at
get out
the
of there, right? Um, I knew it. Um, but and then came back and landed. And one of the most inspirational things he said to me was, "It's like I just wanted to see what all this hard work is for, what all this aviation is for. It's opening up this world, you know." And I was fortunate enough to be able to experience that very young. I was fortunate enough to be in a family that was closely tied with the FAA, with my dad as a controller. I have an older brother who flew C-17s for the Air Force. It's in the family flying. And one of the biggest motivations behind what we're doing is, if we approach this with first principles honed in on safer and more accessible, we open up the opportunity for more people to experience what this is in a way that's environmentally conscious, it's safe, it's forward leaning, and it takes some of that congestion off the surface streets, which living here in LA is a real problem.
yes.
So let's get into the air a little bit, you know. And make this available as, you know, the incredible thing that it is. But again, with safety at the absolute forefront of that, you know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
that's what
could
we're trying to
say
do.
on our front, the Kennedy, we could probably use your vehicle here as well.
There
But
you go.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
get
No,
into
it's
Chicago.
it's a real problem, you know,
Yeah.
and thankfully the automotive industry is doing everything they can to solve that as well, and you're seeing the benefits of electric vehicles and self-driving really trying to move the needle on at least reducing chaos on the system and reducing strain on the system. But boy, is flying an incredible way to get around
Oh, it
too,
is. It
you
is.
know.
It is.
Um, and it opens up longer distances and more opportunity, and so
But, you know, you're
very
absolutely
cool.
right, 'cause, you know, it's you know, in this side of the world, right? So I do it, you know, my day job is managing an airport, but and I've been in that for a long time too. Mine wasn't as much of an aha moment as yours, but I remember I was going into radiology and I wanted to be a pilot, but it was salary wise, it was atrocious at the time to be a pilot. Fortunately, that's changed for our pilot friends. Um, but you're right. But you know, I remember being like, oh, there's got to be somebody that talks about ticket counters and where they need to go and working with the
Mhm.
airlines. And then, you know, fast forward 20 something years, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm doing that.
There you go. There you
But
go.
you know, when you look at it from both sides, I mean, you know, unfortunately, you know, on like on my side of it, you do see accidents and incidents, and a lot of that can be avoided, right? Because it's just either people rushing but like I said, the stats that you guys put forward about, you know, most people not finish 70% of the people not finishing their pilot's license when they start it. Is it 2% of the population has a pilot's license, I think, at least in your paperwork, or 0.02?
I believe that's about right. Yeah, and I'm not sure what the numbers are right now, but
Yeah, I mean, it
it's
makes
incredibly
sense,
small.
probably,
Yeah, yeah,
compared, I think, to your notes, 92% people have a driver's license.
right,
So,
exactly.
obviously,
Yeah,
there's a market
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
But it is, you know, to your point about access, you know, and getting people into it. I often say, like where I work, we have unintended barriers because people just don't really understand, you know, especially at a general aviation airport, you know, what does signature mean? What does Atlantic mean?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
is that an
yeah,
ocean? It is, but you
yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah,
and so
yeah.
getting more people, you know, into the industry, having technology that allows them to be a part of it too. I love that, and they can figure out all those corn mazes all these
Yes, exactly.
years,
See?
like,
So,
Nate
yeah.
over there knows how to get out of this. I don't
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, we have some unintended second and third order effects, I guess, with that because we got to
right.
make corn mazes more complicated. you know. Yeah.
So we talked about where you guys are, where you plan on going here in 2026. 2028 is kind of a milestone as well. So in that time, for people, like you said, the website, is it airhart.com?
AirhartAero.com. Yep.
And that's where anybody at this point, are you offering pilots and stuff? Because we do have a lot of pilots that listen that they could come in and use a simulator? Or what would be beyond maybe putting down the deposit right now? Is there other ways
Yeah.
for them to engage with your group?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the one thing we're actually launching next month, really excited about this, what we're calling Hangar Days. And we'll publish those. Those will be available. So if anyone goes to our website and signs up to learn more, they'll be then notified about these things that are going on. But Hangar Days, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a couple different days coming up, leading up to AirVenture and kind of through the summer, where we're literally opening up our hangar to see really everything. We're actually going to be very transparent of, here's the simulator, here's our flying test bed, here is our production hardware, we have what we call the museum, where it's all of the different iterations leading up to today. In fact, even sitting on the table right in front of me, we have early production circuit boards, and custom made servos and flight controls, and we're 3D printing flight controls a couple times a day right now. It's just really honing in on
Yeah.
these things. And so we've presented some of that as what we call the museum, where you can see, hey, here's what it takes to go from, we've got to be able to do this in a better way, to, you know what, we are, this is here, and it's coming into the world. And then, of course, folks can then go up and get behind the controls of our simulator. And I'll be transparent, we're doing that for two reasons. One, we want people to be able to see and experience what this is. Look at the UI, give us some feedback on it, experience what simplified flight controls feel like, and how that kind of future oriented, semi autonomous dynamic with an aircraft can be, and really get kind of a comfortable level with it, because it's intuitive enough that it really does become quite natural very quickly. That's one reason. And then the other reason is, we do want to see um, how how effectively our system is producing better outcomes. And so we are paying attention to, we'll have people, hey, man, hand fly, hold a heading, hold a speed, hold an altitude. Okay, now hand fly a turn, hand fly an approach. Let's just see this. We are paying attention to and recording altitude, airspeed, all that kind of stuff correlated to control inputs, because um, the combination of physical behavior and input is actually a big insight into pilot competency and workload and cognitive workload. And we're learning a tremendous amount about that as well. And so Hangar Days, it's a chance to come and take a look at that, and see what that is. And then actually the other thing, we'll be going to Oshkosh for that.
And
And then
Chicago?
exactly, via Chicago Executive
Via
Air Force.
Chicago.
Exactly. Yep. Good plug for that.
Right, right.
And we'll be there as well. So leading up to that, we've got a pretty big marketing push that we're going to be turning on. So you know, hopefully people should be seeing what we're doing. Like I mentioned before, we are maintaining a bias for change. We want to be incredibly closely connected with our pilot community, because we are not building this for ourselves. I personally am a pilot. In fact, Nikita is also a pilot. But we're building this for the community, and we want to move the needle forward together. We are actively. I'm on probably 10 or 12 meetings a week with other company founders, other company owners in the industry, talking to them on, okay, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? Because we're trying to move together. This, if we take a highly collaborative, forward leaning approach to this, we can make some really incredible things happen for aviation. And I personally love community. I love connecting, and so let's do this together, right?
Yeah, well, just hearing your vision on it, because I'll be on, reading it on your website. You've explained it in such a way, um, that me again. There's different levels of listeners to this, but for the people that are in it, right, and we've been around it. This will be year 25 for me in aviation. And I've worked for the airlines, I've worked for airports. And, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, is this what, kind of what we've heard through my time in aviation, but
Mhm.
your perspective and the avionic component of it and trying to improve traditional flying as a component of this, I'm all
Hmm.
in. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that thought because especially, you know, in that area, because you when you go to a place like Oshkosh, you know, and you see especially people that, you know, Mosaic maybe gives people an opportunity to fly again that, you know, medically wasn't an option.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what you guys are producing gives them such an advantage to keep
Yeah.
that, you know, moving forward in a safe way.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. So I love that you took some time to explain to me and our listeners because
Yeah.
it didn't completely resonate until I heard you say it, Nate. And
Yeah.
when you said it, I'm like, "Oh, I see
Yeah.
what he's doing. That's a good
Yeah.
idea."
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and one thing I would actually love to challenge, I'd love to present an opportunity for you and for anyone listening to try something. So, a few years back, back when I was getting my instrument rating. At the time I was using ForeFlight, so I did have an iPad in there. I was flying Cirrus, um, but I also was wearing a smartwatch it was a Garmin Pilot watch actually, but a lot of smartwatches do this. Um, it was monitoring my heart rate, and I would record the entire. I would just hit start, and then I would go fly, and I wasn't even thinking about the heart rate sensor anymore, but it was logging that information for the duration of the flight. And the reason I did that was a really exciting one. I would land and come back in and I, obviously I was flying with the CFI. We'd get back on the ground and we go to debrief. And you get the logbook out. All right, what approaches did we do? What holds did we do? All of this. And um it got to the point where, she would start to communicate, like, hey, I think we got a little bit behind the plane here, or, you were great on the ILS, but the VOR, we got to work a little bit there. And what we would do is actually we would pull up this graph of my heart rate throughout the flight, and you would start to see my physiology change based on pretty strongly correlated to not only the complexity of a certain phase of flight, but actually more linked to my competency in that phase. And it got to the point now that we would actually I would pull up the graph and then we would debrief and like, hey, what was your heart rate doing during that VOR hold? And like, yeah, you know what? Not great. I was
Yeah,
stressed, right?
yeah,
And our bodies do communicate our cognitive load in ways that if we pay attention to that, we can really look at that. And so that was a huge inspiration of, my heart was physically responding to my ability to perform a certain phase of flight. Let's unpack that more, right? If
yeah,
I could have also looked at my control inputs, also looked at my radio behavior, and looked at my checklist behavior, I bet I would have seen an even more detailed look,
yeah.
right? And that was a huge inspiration behind this. Then of let's get there, right? That the tech is available.
Right.
Um, let's unpack that because then what you do is you go, yeah, maybe I performed that VOR hold to standard. I completed the flight. Everything was correct, but I could see, but that was hard. And if I'm going to do that again, I got to work on the part that I'm demonstrating micro levels of inefficiency, right?
Yeah.
Um,
No, I love that challenge. I haven't thought about it in that sense, but I could see where, you know, even in my own mind, I think, you know, like here we're a controlled airport, you know, and I learned to fly out in California, out in Reed Hillview. And so
okay.
some complex airspace there as well. And what I have noticed over time is I feel more comfortable in a controlled airspace, which, you know, I
Yeah.
think it's where
Yeah.
you're brought up, right? And
Sure.
so
Sure.
I'll head
Yeah.
out towards DeKalb or Lake in the Hills or one of those airports, you know,
There you
and
go.
a couple months ago, I was out there, you know, uncontrolled field. There's 5 people in the pattern. Some of them have broken radios. Some of it's coming
Yep.
through. Most people are working the pattern. You have the one guy's like, "I'm coming straight in." It's like,
Yep.
and
By the way, this is the most incredible description of general aviation ever,
right,
right?
right.
Like, this is the world of GA. It's incredible.
But if I had your watch on, I feel like I'd be like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna have a heart
Yeah.
attack."
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Right?
No,
And what's fascinating is that, then it's like, son of a gun, it wasn't the highly complicated airspace.
yeah,
It's out here. I'm out of my comfort zone.
right.
And,
Yeah.
and it's, and with when you pay attention to that, then you start to get a look at, I'm safe. Great. I'm safer, even better. I'm safer and I'm competent, even better. But man, if we can pull that all the way down to how am I at micro phases throughout all of this in a way that that feedback loop is speaking to me,
Yeah.
now we're getting safer. Now we're getting
I
better,
love
right?
that. Well, Nate, I want to be respectful of your time. I know I only had you for an hour, and I've already kept you over that, so I'm going to apologize up front. This has been fascinating for me. I was so looking forward to talking to you about it because as an aviation enthusiast myself, I'm like, oh, this is neat. I could ask
Yeah.
you 8 million questions, and then I'm not going to do that any further.
Sure, sure.
But the
Yeah.
website people can go to connect with you guys on, and
Yep,
you'll
airhartaero.com.
okay.
And truly, if anyone listening or anyone paying attention on this one wants to reach out, please do. We'd love to chat. We'd love to show you what we're doing, and we'd love to be a part of modernizing what we're doing with aviation. So
I
let's do
love
this
that.
together.
And if you're in Chicago or Oshkosh in the summer,
There you go.
say at least Oshkosh. If you're at
Yep.
Oshkosh,
Yep.
they'll find you guys there.
Yep.
I'm looking for because you weren't there this last year, right? I think you showcased in 2023. Is that correct?
Right. And we were there again last year.
You were okay.
Yep.
Well, this year
Yep.
I'm going to find you. If I don't see you in Chicago, I'll find you up there.
Excellent. We will be there. Yeah.
All right.
After you pass through Chicago Executive on your way up to Oshkosh, find
Exactly.
Earhart.
Well, Nate, thank you so
Okay.
much for being on Destination Aviation.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor. Have a good one.